You are listening to Something Rather Than Nothing. Creator and host, Ken Volante. Editor and producer, Peter Bauer.
So what were you doing the other night? Were you doing like a stage thing, like a little
Yeah,
training?
I'm
Or
directing. I started this year. I started a youth theatre. So I'm sure I told you the last time we were chatting. I was fortunate enough to be involved in youth theatre when I was growing up, and that was what kind of instilled in me the confidence and I got to see that theatre was actually a job that people could do,
yeah,
and not just something that's a hobby. So so I've been working with a group called Drama House, out out of the city centre of Dublin, but still in Dublin, and we started a youth theatre this year. And so I've been working with the founder of Drama House, and we're participating in a competition with the National Theatre in London, where they commission a number of plays every year for young people. So we're taking on one of the plays, and I'm directing one of them this year, which is an enormous challenge because we have no idea if we'll be allowed to be in class together, or have to rehearse on Zoom, or have to perform on Zoom, or perform on stage, or whether we'll have an audience. Everything is absolutely up in the air. So it's been a great lesson in just being in the moment, I suppose.
yeah, and it sounds exciting. And I think the uncertainty, is definitely part of any production. So, Rachel, I'm talking to the listeners right now. I'm going to describe what's going on.
Mhm.
We have Rachel Lally here, who is
I'm back.
I don't want to say an old friend of the show, but a friend of the show over
A
time. I looked it up,
long-standing friend.
Rachel. I looked it up. You were on episode 41. I have that episode date as July 1st, and lovely episode. I will say, I gotta say, Rachel, that I continued the show after you were on because not that your answers weren't good, but you didn't resolve all the questions. So even after you were on, I decided to continue the the show. Some questions were unanswered, but we have Rachel back, and Rachel wanted to welcome you, and I think you're going to ask me questions. Isn't that what
I'm
we
gonna
decided?
turn I'm going to turn the tables on you, Ken, because I've been listening to you for a while, and you've been asking all the questions, and being the philosopher you are, I feel like you need to be in the spotlight, and we need to put you in front of the microphone, and we need to shine the light on you for a moment, and I'm going to ask you some questions and see how you do.
Okay, before I do get to ask one as a point of personal privilege, I'd imagine these might be a combination of the strange combination of six of one, half a dozen of the other, and something rather than nothing. That's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful, yeah, and it's going to be off the wall, I'd say.
All right. Thanks, Rachel. I'm ready, and I'm thoroughly terrified.
Good, good. That's where I like it. I'll start off easy. I'll ease you in gently, and then I'll hit you when you least expect it. So, Ken, tell me, what were you like as a young person, as a young human?
As a young person, I don't remember. Um, uh, I talk to people sometimes and they're like, I remember when I was like 3 years old and, I was staring at the tree and it was sunny and it was beautiful and I was blissful. Like, I don't know. Like, I have memories. Actually, Rachel, you're going to appreciate what I think my first memory is. And it might be illustrative. I think I was supposed to be going to preschool and I was in line and somebody made fun of me and I punched that person in the stomach and I never got taken into school. I think that happened. Um, I got pushed in line when I was younger, so that definitely threw me off. No, I didn't do a lot of art. I did a lot of reading. I was a very athletic kid. I played baseball. I played football. I was really fast runner. And I didn't create many things that I recall, but I really enjoyed sports, and I did well in school. Um, but yeah, not as far as art or creativity. I had a lot of energy. I was a smart little kid. I was a good little athlete, and I had a troublemaker streak in me. And I think that's come out in art and in the work that I do as a union rep.
Can you remember what the kid hit you for? What they made fun of you about?
Um, I don't know, but it was kind of weird. It's like I wasn't socialized properly. Like it was too young. You know what I mean? Like when you take a little kid, it's like, hey, I want to take the kid to go onto Santa's lap, and it doesn't work out. It's like way before time. But no, I was just like, I like to tell that I remember this interaction, or I had this interaction that I was fighting for justice or something like that. Rachel, I can't tell you that. I much might have just been irritated and maladjusted.
That might be a work of creation of your own. We'll never know, will we? Can?
Thank you. You're trying to salvage it. Thanks, Rachel.
So you do a lot of things. You like me are multidisciplinary artists. You have your podcast, you paint, you write, you probably do lots of other stuff that I don't know about. I know you've been working on videos and been involved in a burlesque scene and lots of other things. So what forms of art do you enjoy? And I suppose there's two parts to this question. What forms of art do you enjoy consuming, and what forms of art do you enjoy being involved with?
Yeah, I'm very, I would say, reasonably obsessive about art that I love, and by that I mean I've you know I've read and listened to hundreds and thousands of books, over my life. I've watched a ton of movies. My dad was a huge movie buff, and we would watch the worst movies and the best movies. Terrible horror movies, low budget movies. Um, the top movies, and so a lot of movies and a lot of books, and then a very pivotal moment for me. I never really saw painting or painted or knew painters, but when I was 17, I had the opportunity to travel overseas on a class trip, and I went to Spain.
Mhm.
And I studied Velasquez, and I studied Spanish painting, and I was able to go to the Prado. And I was just, Rach, I was just a city kid. I'm from Pawtucket, Rhode Island, the East Coast in the U.S. And so a lot of this higher art or the Prado, all this type of stuff was kind of
Mhm.
like talking that I'm taking a trip to Mars. You know what I mean? It was very
Okay.
different than the experience of others. But love movies, love painting, and I love books. I do enjoy writing. I don't write a lot. And you said I'm in. I did a documentary on Zora von Pavanin, who was also
Mhm.
a guest on episode 10. And yeah, just started working on video. Another video project I worked on was with a friend of mine, artist Megan McGroarty, which was a work, Why She Runs, about women running for office around the United States in the 2016 2018 election, and the unique issues women face while running for office. And Rachel, I'm sure you're sensitive to some of these things where, why
Absolutely.
do you have a press conference with a long discussion about what a female candidate is wearing rather than her position on, public housing, right?
Yeah, we certainly have that problem here too. It's
You
not
have
different.
that. Yes. So, yeah, so those are some of the things that I really enjoy, and things that I've done, and I adore painting, myself. So, yeah.
Great. So tell me more about your painting. Let's chat about your art. Let's talk about how you but how you come to create what you do, what is your process, um, how you decide what projects to work on.
Oh my gosh. Rachel, I feel like I'm excited by hearing these questions as much as I have asked them. I got to admit, I probably haven't thought too much about it. No, painting for me is a very strange relationship and process. And the reason why I say it's strange is that Rachel, I don't recall painting anything at all in my life prior to being when I was 45. And somebody introduced me to painting, and it was very crucial at that point. It was about 3 years ago, and I didn't know, kind of that I had permission to paint or what you used or what any part of the process. But I learned, and like a lot of things I've studied is self-taught. And at that point, it was very important for me to communicate in a different way, Rachel. When you say things with words or you say things visually, they're very powerful languages, but they can communicate different things and can be different ways of speaking. So when I started painting, it was just kind of like an outburst of like whatever the heck showed up. And then I started to realize that I might be able to express things abstractly or formally or by a strange design rather than ways I wasn't comfortable with, technical expertise, being able to see something and then record it on the canvas. I haven't shown myself to be any of that, and that hasn't been my interest. It's been more of a feeling. And I also paint with a great, great, great impatience, meaning that I can't stay in front of it for too long. So it tends to be evocative and reactive and a little bit uneven of an experience. I don't go to the easel to just drift away for a few hours. It's actually somewhat of the opposite of that experience. So it's been
Mhm.
a exploration for me.
Great. You said two really interesting things there. The first was that you didn't realize that you had permission, at the age that you were to participate. I think well, I'm a big advocate for, everyone can learn anything. And I hear this a lot when I teach drama myself. People say like, oh, but I'm not an actor. I'm not creative. I don't they make excuses or they feel like they're not allowed or there's barriers up and it's not for them or they're not allowed to try certain things, and it's really important for people to know that you can start anything at any moment in time, and once you want to learn something you can learn how to do it. um it's really really important. And I think the second thing you said that was really interesting um, was about just going into it with no sort of preconceptions and just like I think your painting work from what I've seen anyway is very expressionist. So you put a lot of yourself into it, but it's not defined by what anyone else has told you it should be, or um it's your own conversation with the canvas. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think, Rachel, and I want to say this because I've been talking to folks around this. I've been, quite honestly, in doing the podcast, I'm really just, befuddled at art and art processes. I'm just truly fascinated by what artists do and how they do it, and including myself. But I'm really just always kind of just, in a state of wonder. About creating things. And I think I have a different relationship with painting, with writing, with anything, with video, and with producing a podcast. And I think part of my task has been to create a good relationship with each one of those,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still in the process of doing so. Because I find that I'm having a relationship with what I'm creating. And sometimes I think it's manifest in kind of unhealthy relationship aspects. Like I want to make sure my relationship with what I create is calibrated and expansive and serving my own mental health.
Yeah, I think very much what you're talking about is the argument between the process and the product. And sometimes the process is more important than the product, and sometimes the focus is on the product more than the process. And
Yeah.
both are okay. Both are okay.
Yeah, that's a really good distinction. That's that's helpful. And everything I create has been more towards like health and betterment. So that distinction I think is really helpful. That's why I'm talking to you, Rachel.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about, and the processes are important. I think, most of the time, uh, the actual artistic process itself, because so much of it is invisible for the person who views the final product. They don't necessarily see the whole process that goes into it, or the thought patterns, or the all sometimes you can look at a painting and not realize like that's a month's worth of sketches or years worth of playing with a theme, or you can
Yeah.
go and see a play and not you don't see the months and months of rehearsals that have gone into it, or the years of training that an actor has been through, or you watch a film and you forget that it was filmed over the space of a year in like loads of different locations and stuff. But the process, lots of things happen in the process that are very magic, and the product isn't gonna be the same if you don't go through all those steps either.
Yeah, and that process versus the outcome is something that I'm newer in the relationship with, and the painting process itself is very therapeutic for me. The simple application of wet paint onto a canvas and those strokes in and of itself probably has most of the therapy for me. So I know that, so I
Yeah,
got that, and
it
that's
was
helpful.
interesting as well what you were saying about expressing yourself in a visual way, which I think lots of people think as being sort of an out there kind of thing, or like a thing that artists do. But when you look at the statistics of how people receive information, and the communication of words being like 10% of how you receive your impression of someone or a message, and the visual or nonverbal information being like a much higher percentage of that, something like almost 40, 50, 60%. um it's no doubt that humans constantly are looking for these visual ways to communicate with each other. It's really important to us, like on a very basic scientific level as well.
Thank you, Rachel. This is why I have you. You're helping me along.
Okay, so right, what's the situation at the moment with you guys there in with COVID and the pandemic and stuff? So here in Dublin, Ireland, we are literally we've just come out of a 6 week quite severe lockdown where everything but essential services has been open. So we've been still able to go to the supermarket and stuff, but not much more than that. So this week is the first week of us being able to go to like clothes shops or a restaurant with very strict measures still in place before Christmas. I guess the goal here is for everyone to be able to spend Christmas with their families with little risk of infection rates going up. So where are you guys with that at the moment?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, right? That's such a mess. Um, it's this the I don't know. It feels like for the last few months, it feels like kind of being held hostage, and not by the government or any of that type of thing. For me here, it's the problem is the rest of Americans, because we've seen this huge acceleration of kind of like denial. Conspiracy theories. I'm not sure if you've seen a lot of this. It's real.
I've
It's
been
real.
following a lot, yeah, and
Yeah.
we certainly have had a surge, or like a just this emergence of a subset of society that I didn't think was so large in this country, that are very anti-science, anti I mean, anti-establishment, but I don't necessarily disagree with that. But very anti-fact, I would say.
Well, I think that part of the dynamic that I've seen that's changed. I mean, Rachel, you're a thinker. I'm a thinker. I mean, there are certain I want to say assumptions. There's certain beliefs that I had. Like if you take a look, here for the United States, right? I didn't really. I mean, the United States has a very violent, bloody, difficult history, but I didn't see the U.S. as like a fascist place. Like I didn't see that there was something in the spirit where people would kind of be like, nah, like nobody could tell me what to do. I don't need to take, commands from an old man, like there was just kind of some like spirit of rebellion. And I honestly don't I overestimated that piece. And yeah, I mean, we're I'm experiencing some things here, just seeing what the in this country where you actually have a verifiable like numerical outcome of an election where I think it's something like 80+% of like the Republican Party here has not accepted or won't enunciate that another candidate has won, that you have massive resistance to some health protocols. um, it's just really incredible that there are forces at play that seem kind of beyond the control of, I don't know, maybe like rational, balance minded, science oriented, health oriented, communal living. It's kind of like some of the worst aspects here of like individualism. I'm going to get my own thing. Anti-government, anti-anybody tell me anything has run rampant and made it a very, very, dangerous situation here. So I don't know. Like I said, I feel like the divisions that are here is I've never felt such strong antagonism in categorically towards people who are endangering my health and what it means for the future. So I feel it's a pretty intense situation, um, with surprises. And I've heard some surprise in your voice about some of the things you've seen, I think, during the pandemic there. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just unprecedented to hear that something on this scale would happen. And I suppose it's the first time, certainly for my generation, probably for many generations in this country, where we've had to trust our government. And I mean, our government is, whether they're trustworthy or not, I mean, there are experts and there are people you can trust within that group. And what I feel is happening in the US is that there's a lot of distrust, like in various factions, and distrust of different parts of society. It's very much in contrast with each other. There is mistrust there, and it's very vicious and aggressive, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, and I think for me, this might sound a little strange, but with Trump, he's a media reality type show type guy, and the reality shows came out when they were trying to bust the screenwriters and such over here in the U.S., right? So there was this regular old, your regular old programming, and then when the writer strike came about, they moved more towards a reality format in order to try to bust the union. So we're like,
Hmm.
part of this with Trump is like, I think we're unpaid actors in a reality show. It
Yeah,
just feels that way. With hopefully a peaceful transfer of power in January. So
fingers crossed, and I hope it is peaceful and it works out. And yeah, well, we're all the rest of the world are waiting to see what happens. So in terms of of what is happening culturally, politically at the moment. Where does art fit into all of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been, as you know, asking a lot of guests because I think there's been a couple major disruptions, at least in my experience here in the U.S., as far as the pandemic and the role of art in a pandemic to is it value, does it go up, does it increase? I think it does, but also there's the component of social change that we've seen here, particularly in very close to me in Portland, and the historical racial injustices in the U.S. And I believe, right now, that art has a very, very pivotal role in a different role for different people. For some, I think it is, part of the revolution or part of the opening up of opportunity, ability, consciousness. So I work in the labor movement and, pickets, visual pickets, protest, bodies, artists putting their bodies on the line in protesting racial injustice.
Mhm.
In the U.S., I see a lot of those things as very artistic acts and formal art helping that happen. So I view art now as having such a vital, active, everyday role in disruption, but also in awareness about the social change that's going on. I get excited about it,
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
but I think there's a countervailing potential in art of being a conservative reinforcer. You know what I mean? Uh, of white power, of kind of historical injustices. So it can cement injustice, but it can also disrupt art's ability to do that.
Yeah, you're dead right. And actually, it's very interesting what you said about, when all the screenwriters went on strike, the reality TV format became at the forefront. And it is kind of interesting how that narrative can shift, and it can be, art can be abused and misused as well. And I think many artists don't like to accept that reality or think about it too much. So I think that's a really important point that you brought up. So, Ken, what is art?
I don't have a big answer on this. My answer on this is art is somebody pointing at something and showing you it. An artist is a gonna paint something and put it on the wall and point to it. It's going to be a video. Is going to be, but the artist is going to point at something and say, "Look at this." And
So, does art necessary? So, is art defined by the fact that there is an observer or an audience?
I think it's on both sides. I think there is intention, and in a lot of discussions I've had with artists like yourself and others on the podcast, there tends to be two major elements to this, right? One is the artist, like the intent of the artist, and one is the viewer. So I do see the relationship as the individual who's pointing, physically pointing, showing, representing, saying that this is something for you to look at. Um, but it is dependent. It is dependent on the other's eyes. So there is that relationship, I think, between the art piece in that which is viewed, but primarily that the artist is pointing at something and say, "Look at this. Please look at this," or it's $25 to look at this.
And what or who would you say has made you who you are?
Um,
Can you hear the guy singing? Hang on.
is there something in the background?
There's a guy outside singing like at the top of his voice.
I couldn't even hear it. It's a mysterious sound. Um, who or what made me? You know, my parents, my parents were, and especially my mom. And I want to say a couple things about that. My parents, my mom was 16 when she was pregnant with me. My dad, so
Wow.
she was a sophomore in high school, and my dad was a senior in high school. And they're just a couple kids trying to get by, and both come from larger families, and they started a family.
As a
And
woman, I can't imagine being a 16-year-old having a
yeah, yeah. So my mom was a sophomore in high school, and she ended up getting her GED. And my dad was working, and they had little Ken Jr. on the way, and then my brother, um, and then my sister about 12 years later. So I had very young parents, and
Absolutely.
it really is. And so you know my mom and dad's really instilled upon me. I mean, they knew that we grew up in the city. They had seen a lot of stuff in the city, kind of difficult things for working people, things like alcoholism in the
Mhm.
family, just some of the difficulties in getting through life. But they very much they put everything into the environment for us kids to to do our thing, to kind of like have a normal life, to have what we needed. But the biggest piece of it, Rachel, was that they said to me, you can do whatever you want to do. You got to go to college. You got to further your education. You got to look at possibilities, but you got to do whatever it is they feel it can do. And I also want to mention something else about my mom. There's certain things that, as I've gotten older, I look back where she did stuff that was just kind of like mind opening, because she's a really quiet woman, and she's really interested in having people feel comfortable and feeling at home. But
Mhm.
we'd be watching TV in the 80s, and there'd be a gay couple on TV, or something would be on a news program, and she'd be like, "What do you think about that?" And she was talking about how it's important that people love each other. We got to uphold love. I mean, there'd be I remember seeing a video. There's like a natural birth, and my mom was like, "Watch this. This is where babies, come from. This is a natural birth." So she did a
Wow.
lot of, yeah, she did a lot of things that where you wouldn't know these things. She was so quiet about her. Just for her, is fundamentally like, treat people the right way, give people the dignity that they deserve, let people love who they want to love. And so it was quiet, but it was very impactful for me. And and my dad and him instilling both in my brother and I and my sister the ability to do what you want. So they didn't close down options for me. And so I was just this city kid, wide-eyed, interested in things, no idea which direction I was going. But I think it's very clear that my parents laid down the foundation so I could explore what I wanted in life. And that I couldn't rate that more highly.
She sounds like an incredible person. Both of your parents do, your mother in particular, to
They're
have
still
that.
together.
That's
They're
amazing. You
still
know,
together. I'm 48, so the calculation for my parents' anniversary, I always remember it's X plus one. So I'm 48. Their 49th anniversary is coming up.
wow. I'm so impressed that you can do maths too, because that's not a strong point of mine. What an amazing answer to that question. And so, what is it that makes you want to create things or to be an artist?
um, I I'd like to say, I'd really like to say, Rachel, it's an innate thing in creating the art for me, but it's not, or it's not yet. I'm just being honest. I'm not connected to the deep
I don't
therapeutic
know.
element.
I think it sounds like it is, but it's
It's like,
interesting that you're saying that it's not, because from your answers, it sounds like it is something that's very innate.
well, I feel the need to be exploring these issues and to be creating things. Um, and I feel at this point in my life more compelled to. But this is the philosopher's dilemma, and I'm probably interested in what you have to say about this, Rachel. I mean, there's something funny about this show that I do,
Mhm.
where when you're a philosopher, you kind of laugh at the questions that you ask, right? Why is there something rather than nothing? Why are we here? What is death? What does it mean to live a good life? All these type of things. And it isn't like if, on the basis of me doing this program and the questions you ask, because you do a philosophy program yourself, that the questions aren't, the questions still kind of haunt you after the fact. Like they
Well,
kind of,
the thing is, you can never know the answers to the question, can you? You can only think about what the options might be. So
right.
there's so many questions that you'll never have the answer to, and there's many points in life where, whether it's tragic circumstances or very happy circumstances, where you'll never know that why something happened for the best or the worst, or why somebody did something that they did or not. You'll never have the answer to those questions, and it is the most frustrating thing, I think, when you're a human. You always seek for answers, you seek to understand everything, and to be in a place where you can accept that sometimes you just don't have the answers. And you can be really angry and bitter about that, or you can accept it and be at peace with it, or laugh about our struggle to continue to try to do it anyway. Um, yeah, I mean, but that's fundamentally what being a human is, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, and I like the way that you put it too. And I just want to, the point about the questions are haunting, but they're revitalizing, and they're also maddening. They contain all these qualities that's like art itself. But on the question of, like, I mean, I want to give maybe just a tiny bit, a little more specific on, like, on creating things. Like, I know when I need to paint and I go to paint. If I'm going to write, I have to force myself to write. And when I'm doing the podcast and creating, in creating these type of things, I'm usually pretty darn unsure of what I'm trying to do or where it's going. But I like the ability that within the conversation, within the creative act, that other things open up. And I'm trying to do the podcast as an experiment. So Rachel, I forget if I told you this, like, coming up pretty soon, I'm going to switch over the podcast for like a mini experiment where I switch it and call it nothing rather than something.
Okay.
And
I don't know.
yeah, I'm gonna be doing this. So we can do a few more episodes, and then I'm gonna switch it within the context of the program. And the idea is this: over 4 episodes, through a Buddhism and Taoism and some philosophical traditions that point to that there actually is nothing that you can show. That within that, to exploring the question that way, and at the end of that, I'm going to try to lead uh, uh, for a podcast a kind of online mindfulness, nothingness therapy to, kind of switch the question around and have it lead towards health, and then
Mm.
go back to this program, but you're doing such a fantastic job interviewing me. I fear you're going to take this program over, Rachel.
I might have a job, Ken. It's really interesting because as you were saying that, I'm thinking that's very stoic, to live without anything or to be without luxuries and to be content with that. That for me is that philosophical. That's the way. Um. So, Ken, why is there, if there is, something rather than nothing?
I'm going to answer it two ways, isn't that kind of a weasel way after all this time?
Don't disappoint me now.
I'm going to answer it two ways, and I want it to reflect what this time in my life and the studies that I've done, what are the way I see answers to this question. First of all, I will say that the question might be incorrectly posed, which I've hinted at in past episodes. On a philosophical basis, I am indeed heavily influenced by Buddhist philosophers, including the philosopher Nagarjuna. And this philosophical tradition is based kind of on a deconstruction. If you point at things to be the case, now within the Buddhist tradition, there's no thing in of itself, and there's no ego or observer to observe the thing. There's more of a flow in a reality of which we use language to kind of parse out, right? So what I mean by this is that I'm sitting here and I'm looking at a microphone, and the microphone is there, but it's just an experience flow. But as far as language, and I need to break this apart to describe this to you, I'm going to describe myself as a subject, as an ego, as a person. I'm going to describe this physical object, the microphone. But there's a belief within Buddhist philosophy that there's no inherent essence or inherent there-ness of either myself or the microphone. So I believe fundamentally that we are in a situation where there actually is no thing in a philosophical sense. The other way, like I said, it's a little bit weaselly to try two approaches at this, is that I'm heavily influenced by astrophysics and cosmology and science, and it's certainly something I've studied on my own. But I've been influenced in such a way that I do believe, though I can't explain, that the universe does seem to have exploded out of potentiality and to have come actually from nothing. So at the end of the day, Rachel, I think I'm committed to trying to defend that there is no something. That's what I got for you.
Well, I wasn't expecting that now at all. I think I'm gonna turn the tables yet again, Ken. I'm gonna ask you a question that you might not be expecting.
Okay.
So we both live pretty close to the coast. Yeah?
Yeah, about an hour away from me.
Yeah. So I'm walking along the beach one day here in Dublin. We're very lucky here. We're on the sea basically. 20-25 minutes in the car. You can jump in the sea and go for a freezing cold swim. There's seals, there's dolphins, there's the whole lot. Anyway, I find this rock, right? And it looks amazing. Like, it actually looks like a sculpture. And fortunately, because I'm me and I'm multidisciplinary and I'm very talented, I just so happened to be running a pop-up gallery in Dublin this week, and I decided I'm going to put this stone on display as a sculpture. I'm going to present it to the world as a sculpture. It's not, though. It's really just a rock that I found on the beach. Is it art, Ken?
Yeah. Oh, That's such a good one. I'll tell you when it's art is because you said look at this. And when it was sitting there, I think there's a very deep question of which philosophers can tangle with that if you are a believer in a God, if you are a theist, if you are a believer in
Hmm.
God or gods, there's going to be an author behind that, and I think you can attempt to call it a work of art in and of itself because of the creator who's created those things, or the magic forces of the earth, or whatever, that there is a creator. But if you're agnostic on that, I'm an
But
agnostic.
then, Ken, is a tree a work of art?
It is not.
What if I'm like, hey, dude, look at this tree. It's lovely.
Then maybe there's a presentation element, I think. Here's what I'm saying, and we can kick this around. What I'm saying is these objects, these living things, these scenes, that rock, that boulder, with the belief in a creator, I think you have an artist. If you doubt the separate creator, you don't have a work of art. But you, Rachel, you being the multi-talented person that you are, you looking at that beautiful creation, you getting away from any question of theism, whether a god created that, and you putting that for display and others saying, hey, look at this, it's an art piece now.
So if I stand on the stage in the theatre and do absolutely nothing, and I charge everyone like 85 quid, right? And you've paid your 85 quid, you're going to see Rachel Lally live in I don't know what's your big arena there. Here it's the Tree Arena. Rachel Lally in the Tree Arena, 85 quid tickets. And I walk on the stage. I'm like, I am art.
Well, great great question. I would say that that art in the art world, or the established art world, is that, right? So if I'm a famous artist, and I know it's an extreme position, but if I'm a well-known artist, right? So let's go back to the rock, the beautiful, we'll call it the rock sculpture, right?
Like it's like a Michelangelo, this rock. Like it's absolutely amazing.
It's just beautiful. And I'm Andy Warhol, and I've gotten out of the city, right? I've gotten
Mm-hmm.
out of the city, and
But why do you have to
my
do Andy
friend.
Warhol? Why can't you be Ken Volante?
Here's why. Ken Volante goes and sees that and says, "Hey, everybody! Hey, art world! Look at this piece of art!" And they say, "Ken Volante, what's going on? Like what's going on? What's the context?" But there's a ready-made context in the art world for, and I'm talking Warhol now, or the name, to point at something and say this is art. And because of the magic alchemy that we believe exists in the art world, that might be art. It's the Brillo sculpture, right? It's the Brillo box,
It's the banana
right? I
on the canvas. Yeah.
Well, I worked in the grocery store, Rachel, third shift. I worked in a grocery store for 6, 7 years. I love working in a grocery store because of the people. Now, when I picked up the Brillo boxes and put them on the shelf, there was no accepted magic. There was no context for
But if
anybody to
you
say,
put a frame on it, would people consider it differently?
possibly because of my definition, where I've said if art is somebody saying, look at this, if you look at it and see it in that way, you're looking at a piece of art.
But
Where
is
did the
it?
magic happen, Rachel?
But is it?
Where did the magic happen?
Where,
Why
where,
did the
where's the
why did the
process?
well, I mean, that's where the I was discussing recently with Holly Campbell on a recent episode of the podcast. And there's this book called Big Magic, and she just raved about it, and I went into it, and I was like, oh, like I always like when my guests rave about something, and it was just a gorgeous book. And it's basically that there's this living idea that thoughts are energies that live, and that these thoughts may visit you. So, Rachel, right next to you, there may be a thought of this grand play of which you're the you are the person, and you latch onto that thought. Has been traveling the world for 2,500 years, but finally it's found Rachel Lally to receive manifestation.
Isn't that how ghosts work, though?
Yeah, it's a ghost. It's magic. It's weird. There's a transformation.
I'm not,
Um,
I'm not totally against that, by the way. I'm just saying, it just sounds like a ghost.
well, I
Maybe,
wanted to.
do you think there's like
Yeah.
ghost plays and ghost songs in the world and they just like smack into you one day and you're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea.
Well, let's. I want to go back, Rachel. I want to ask you something on the bit
Well,
about where there's nothing. All right, so I really love your. I really love what you said about. All right, I'm going on the stage, right, and we're talking about nothing, right?
yeah.
Here I am on the stage, right? Now let's say it's you, Rachel, right?
Mhm,
So you go out on stage, and I'm gonna say it's in Dublin. There's
mhm.
some recognition of you, right?
Oh, but then
Um,
doesn't get booed off the stage right away. Like no two ways about it. Okay.
Well, what if you let's change it a little bit. What if you were dialed I mean, what if you were dialed up, Rachel, right? Your
Mhm.
parents, you're dialed up. You go out there, people this is Rachel Lally, and she's out there, and she's gonna stand there, and she does this crazy podcast. This might be a thought experiment that you are experiencing, you know, and then you're out there, and you do indeed nothing. You did
Yeah.
nothing, right? What is
It's
that
nothing.
event?
It's nothing rather
What
than something. I'm doing
it's
nothing.
nothing.
So are you saying that the context defines the art?
Well, look at an absurdist, not absurdist existentialist, or a play about nothing, Waiting for Godot, right, Rachel? Right?
What a great
So,
play.
right, a great play, right? But
Great Irish writer.
funny, the deep cosmic joke is that nothing's occurring, kind of, right? I mean, nothing's.
Kind of, but nothing is not happening. Like it's like you put a group of people in a room, and you're like, you go into a class of kids, and you're like, what do you want to do? And they're like, nothing, and you're like, go on then, do nothing. I dare you. They can't do it. They can't do nothing. Doing nothing is very, very difficult.
Well, that's in connecting to the point when I was mentioning about the Buddhism and the therapy and the fundamental question of something rather than nothing. When folks sit down to meditate, which is doing nothing, which is breathing, posture, and your thoughts, you're
First
not.
lessons in acting, by the way, doing nothing. So hard for so many people.
Well, what is the? Tell me about that. I'm fascinated with you. As I'm not trying to take this over, but well, so Rachel, let me it's just to kick around ideas.
Mhm.
I'm fascinated by acting, right? And I have an expressive part of my personality where, like, I just go into different characters, and there's kind of like play acting or something within that.
Mhm.
Now you do. I mean, you have a public face with your work, and you are a creator. In when you act, what
Mhm.
about what you had to say there about acting and about nothing, or the mindset that you need to be in to take on another personhood?
That's a massive question. Okay, so there's so many aspects to it, but I'll speak about a couple. So the first is that to first in order to understand the impact of all of your actions, your movements, your gestures, where you are, your relationship to the place that you're in, to the objects in the space, you first have to understand what it's like to do nothing. And it is so difficult. So, like, lesson of acting 101 is stand in a space, have people look at you and try to do nothing. And we are so conditioned as humans to not do that, that even that is very, very difficult. So you have people touching their hair, fixing their clothes, going from side to side, looking at their friends, trying to make someone laugh. They'll start just laughing because they feel awkward. They'll direct attention to someone else. Like just standing doing nothing, that's a lesson. And then the other thing is to be your authentic self, which is something that clowning and commedia is very concerned with. So to be present and to be yourself without any of those learned behaviors and expected behaviors, without performing. Because in order to learn how to perform, you have to start from a space where you're not performing. But we all perform all the time, every day in our lives. So to learn how to not perform is actually the most difficult thing.
I love that. Yeah. The learning not to perform. And I think there's just something crucial there when I've seen it is like the most within the psychology of mindfulness and Buddhism is that why is it that the most basic activity, that of not performing or doing anything, is the most difficult, which drives a human mad or could drive a human mad. You got to get up. You got to do something else.
But
Unease.
it's funny when you even speak about, Buddhism and doing nothing. I'm picturing a person doing something, which is sitting with their legs crossed and
Yeah.
being in their head. And that's not what doing nothing is.
What is doing nothing, Rachel?
It's so hard. Like I could do a whole podcast on that, like honestly. And it is literally so hard. And I've been in classes, with people, and they've said like, I want to do nothing. I'm like, you're not doing nothing. You're tapping on the floor. You're getting bored. You're writing in your notebook. You're texting someone. You're looking at me because you're really you can't do nothing. Like go on. I challenge you. You can't do it. It's very difficult. It takes a lot of training, and that's what actors train to do, and that's what Buddhists aim for, and I'm sure lots of other spiritualists and other professions, probably ninjas and people who are into karate and stuff. I've no idea. You have to start from neutral and then build on it.
Ninjas. Yeah, some ninja wisdom needs to be involved. The question of nothing is so fantastic. And and the thing is too, Rachel, I'm like totally serious on that bit of, what I'm moving this towards, because I think at the end of the day, I truly believe that, no matter what we're doing around asking these questions and things like that, that the nature of philosophy, art, conversation about these things is therapeutic. Like it has to be therapeutic, or at least that's the way it's been posited for me, because it has to help. It has to help your living. It has to help in your discovery of how, what it is, how to live. Otherwise, it seems to be, potentially creating this kind of like source of agitation. And that book that I mentioned, Big Magic, Elizabeth Gilbert, the author, gets into this. It's this kind of male fetishization of, torture. It doesn't have to be male. Women and other genders can certainly engage in this, but the tortured artist trope of suffering, of the Dostoevsky, of the Russian authors, and the vodka addiction, and or whatever, that there's this deep, and she very much rebels against that, and is saying you need to be in a place of openness and expansiveness for magic to happen, and not be subject to trying to just get through the day, right?
That sounds like my kind of book. I'm definitely gonna suss it out, try and find it. How did it feel, Ken, being the tables being turned? How did it feel being interviewed?
Thank you, Rachel. I am a verbal processor, so I actually have to think a lot to like get to what my answer is. And I am Rachel Lally. You've deeply unnerved me by changing this around. But no, it's great. It's been
Good.
absolutely lovely. You are just wonderful, wonderful philosopher.
Fantastic. It's been really lovely to talk to you again, Ken. I'm sure it won't be the last time.
You are listening to Something Rather Than Nothing.